Our desert climate, especially in the summertime, can be excruciating for our pets. But some common sense, coupled with a few extra safeguards, will keep your cat, dog, and other pals cool and comfortable. The Animal Foundation's chief veterinarian, Dr. Ken Sieransky, shows us how they keep their guests content and how you can too. Dr. Ken Sieransky, thank you so much for joining us here today. And of course, it is one of the first days of summer and fairly hot. Now, us humans, hey, we grab some water, we get into the air conditioning, we get into the shade, but pets obviously don't have that luxury. Tell us how animals sweat differently and what to look out for.
Yeah, so animals really deal with heat a lot differently than people do. Dogs, for instance, their main mechanism of dissipating heat is through panting. So humans we can release sweat all throughout our skin, but a dog really has to rely on panting. They can sweat a small amount through their paw pads, but that panting is really the primary way, so that'll be the first thing to look out for. If your dog is getting too hot, you'll start to notice excessive panting.
Here at the Animal Foundation, obviously, that's you're caring for many, many animals. Tell us about this area where we are here right now and what's happening here.
Yeah, so we're actually in the play yards, and this is where we have play groups for our animals because they do have to live inside indoor-outdoor enclosures. We try to get them out here with our enrichment staff, and they're kind of playing together. And because it is hot out, you know, it's June, so we are taking steps to protect our animals while they're out here. So you can notice here we have, we're in a shady space, it's covered, and we have kiddie pools all around for them to kind of jump in and enjoy.
It seems like it's kind of a tough trade-off, maybe not so much here for what the animals are going through here at the foundation, but at home, your regular dog, what is the trade-off as far as shade and exercise? You don't want your dog just to sit on the couch and do nothing, even during these hottest days of the summer, right?
Yeah, as pet owners, we really have to, in June, July, and August, limit exercise to really probably the early morning hours and late at night. Those are the best times to exercise your dog. Definitely in the middle of the day, it's important for your dog to have a shady place to be, a lot of access to clean, fresh water that you're constantly changing out, and maybe even just keeping your pet inside if you're able to. Being indoors in a climate-controlled environment is really the best thing for our pets here in June, July, and August here in the Valley.
Let's talk a little bit more about that then. What are the laws, or I think you just touched on pretty much the responsible requirements, but what does a person have to do if, say, they have to keep their dog in an outdoor area?
Yeah, so you basically just have to provide your pet with to be able to get out of the sun. So there really has to be a shady place for them, an enclosed area, and of course, access to clean and fresh water. And one thing that pet owners may sometimes forget is if you're using a metal bowl, the water can really get pretty hot in there. So you have to maybe look at alternatives to that and probably throw in some ice, and there's a bunch of things you can do.
And of course, it may seem obvious, but maybe it's not. We see some dogs, of course, they do some high stepping when they're on concrete or cement or something like that, compared to grass. Talk a little bit about the difference of surfaces for the coming in contact with the dogs or the cat's paws and feet.
Yeah, that's another really important thing to remember. I mean, sometimes we forget because we're always walking around with shoes, but our dogs, they have their paw pads, they're not wearing any shoes, and some of the asphalt or sidewalk, especially that is not shaded by the sun, can get really, really hot. So usually what I tell pet owners is to kind of use the back of their hand to test that surface before they decide to go ahead and walk their dog on it, because that can actually burn the paw pads. Those surfaces like asphalt and sidewalk will get hotter than grass would.
Let's talk then again a little bit about different types of breeds. Obviously, some smush-faced dogs, a boxer, a Boston Terrier, or a Persian cat, animals like that, their breathing is a little bit different than some of the longer-snouted animals. Is this a consideration depending on what type of breed you have also, Dr.
Absolutely. So you really have to, there are certain groups of animals that can be more at risk. You already touched on one of them. Those would be kind of your flat-faced animals. So you kind of mentioned like pugs and boxers, Boston Terriers, things like that, Persian cats. You also, just like people, we have older people and younger people. It's the same thing with animals. So our older pets and our very young pets are going to be more susceptible. Those pets that are overweight are going to have a harder time in the heat. So these are all factors to keep in mind.
The length of their coat. Sometimes maybe the other dogs and cats will make fun of them with a short, funny haircut, but that's certainly something to consider also during these summer months, right, Doc?
Yeah, you want to consult with your groomer or your veterinarian to see what would be the best to do with your dog's particular hair coat. There are some dogs that you can, with maybe the longer coats, that you can actually trim those coats. You don't want to do it too close to the skin, because if you get rid of all of that protection, they can actually get sunburn. But then there's dogs that have it's not a good idea to shave them entirely because they maybe have a double coat. And so with those dogs, you would pretty much take out, do a lot of brushing, and there's some special treatments that your groomer can do to get rid of that really thick undercoat.
So your best bet is to consult your vet or even your groomer on a situation like that.
Yeah, on what is best to do for your particular pet's hair coat.
Okay, we've touched on a lot of these things, but now probably the most infuriating topic, where we see pets in cars left unattended in these summer months. Talk a little bit first about the laws. What is the law, Doc?
Basically, it is against the law to leave your pet inside a car that's not running. So it's really something that, we know that a car that does not have the air conditioning running gets hot really quickly. So that temperature will be much higher than the outside temperature, and that can happen extremely quickly. So that is a absolute thing definitely not to do at all.
How can people get around that, or what should they do? It seems fairly obvious, but tell us.
Yeah, really, you just have to plan to just completely avoid that. That is not an option at all. Just like you wouldn't leave your child inside a car, you should also not leave your pet inside a car that's not running. So whether if you have to run in, make sure you have somebody else with you so that you can keep the AC on, or leave your dog at home. There's a bunch of different options, but having your pet inside a hot car is not one of them.
What would you do if you saw a pet struggling in a car outside here at the Animal Foundation, or just when you're out shopping at Target? What would you do, Doctor?
Yeah, so we would first alert the authorities, because that is an emergency. So I think the most important thing would be to alert the authorities as soon as possible, so that someone can potentially come and break the window. But I know that wherever you are too, you could try to go into if you're parked in front of a gym or something like that, you could try to go into the gym and have them kind of radio everybody that's in there to try to find the pet owner. Those are definitely some of the things you can do.
Doctor, you talked earlier about the most obvious pet overheating symptom is panting. Talk about some of the other symptoms that might not be as obvious.
Yeah, so panting, the excessive panting is really the first thing that you'll notice. And so excessive panting is something like the first thing you should watch out for. If your dog is panting more than normal, your mind should automatically thinking, my dog is too hot. Some of the next things that you'll start to see are your dog may have decreased energy level, and they also may have a decreased overall responsiveness. So when you're calling them, they may not even look at you. They may kind of just be putting their head down, and then we can start to get into things that are a little bit more serious. So basically the heat affects all of the organs in the body. So you can see signs from any one of those organs basically as you really start to get into signs of heat stroke, which is life-threatening. So you can see signs of vomiting, seizures, bloody diarrhea. Really all of the organs are affected. So it can really become a fatal condition, heat stroke.
Obviously, when it gets to that stage, what do we need to do?
Yeah, so you need to bring your pet immediately to a veterinarian if you're noticing any of those signs. So if you notice that your pet is excessively panting, what you should do is immediately get them to a shady space, provide lots of clean, fresh water. If you can, maybe put a fan on them. But if you notice any of those other signs, any vomiting, diarrhea, seizures, any of the more severe signs, you need to bring them to your veterinarian as soon as possible.
Is there anything else we're missing? Any other message we need to get across here, Doctor?
Yeah, absolutely. These kiddie pools that we have out here for our dogs are definitely things that pet owners could do at home. So having one of these in your backyard, and your dog knows when it's getting too hot, so they might jump in and then jump back out, and it's a good way to keep them nice and cool.
Terrific information, Dr. Ken. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course, the Animal Foundation, which operates LEAD, is the finest shelter in Clark County. Visit theanimalfoundation.com for special events, adoption information, and much more.